Franklin County, Kansas Territory, May 24th, 1856. In the dead of night, the militiamen enter the house with guns and order 3 men, James Doyle and his adult sons William and Drury, to come with them.
It wasn't just the adults. They tried to take out a kid named John Doyle, and the only reason he was able to survive was because of his mother's pleas. How old was the kid? He was 16 years old.
They reluctantly comply, while Doyle's wife and the boy's mother watches sobbing. The armed men lead the Doyles into the dark and begin to question them. Had they participated in the sacking of the abolitionist town of Lawrence? You see, 3 days ago, an armed paramilitary force had descended on Lawrence, flying banners reading Southern Rights and varying racist phrases. They had smashed the presses of its 2 abolitionist newspapers and burned down the Free State Hotel. As they were being questioned, the Doyles noticed something. These interrogators were not from the law. Rather, they are the radical abolitionist John Brown and 2 of his sons, and this—
It wasn't just John Brown and his 2 sons. It was actually an entire militia of riflemen, owned by John Brown's son, John Jr. He explicitly told John Brown when he asked for his company to do nothing rash.
This is not an arrest. Of course, we don't know exactly how they responded, but at a signal from Brown, broadswords flash in the moonlight. And when the screaming dies down,
they didn't just use the broadswords to kill them. They dismembered the corpses and made James Doyle watch.
Brown finishes James Doyle with a pistol shot, and he and his boys depart. They have a busy night ahead of them. There are 3 more slavers on his list tonight.
James Doyle never owned any slaves and never intended to, according to both the wife and son. When refused entry, they set fire to the house with torches made of prairie hay to keep us all from being burned to death. My father opened the door. They came in and handcuffed my father and 2 older brothers, William and Drury, and started to take me, but my mother begged them to leave me, as I would be all the protection she would have. Brown told mother they were going to take father and the boys to the army and left the house with them. They took them about 300 yards from the house and murdered them. My father was shot in the head, my brothers cut to pieces. They left them all dead in a heap. They went over 2 miles further and killed 2 more men by the names of Wilkerson and Sherman. After daylight, I went to some neighbors' houses and got them to come over and help me bury my father and brothers. Brown said he murdered them on account of being slaveholders, but my father had never owned a slave and never expected to. Although vengeance is not mine, I confess that I do feel gratified to hear that you were stopped in your fiendish career at Harpers Ferry. With the loss of your 2 sons, you can now appreciate my distress in Kansas, when you then and there entered my house at midnight and arrested my husband and 2 boys, and took them out of the yard, and in cold blood shot them dead in my hearing. You can't say you done it to free our slaves. We had none and never expected to own one. But this has only made me a poor disconsolate widow with helpless children. Well, I feel for your folly. I do hope and trust that you will meet your just reward. Oh, how it pained my heart to hear the dying groans of my husband and children. If this scrawl gives you any consolation, you are welcome to it. My son, John Doyle, whose life I begged of you, is now grown up and is very desirous to be at Charleston on the day of your execution, and would certainly be there if means would permit it, that he might just adjust the rope around your neck if Governor Wise would permit it. Now the entire video is kind of just them rambling on about John Brown being such a good family man, but the ending is something I really want to talk about. This is something, not only did the intro grind my gears, but this grind my gears a lot.
Here by God, the man said, in the presence of these witnesses, from this time, I consecrate my life to the destruction of slavery. It was John Brown, and he had found his mission. A mission he was in exactly the right place to pursue, since he had moved to Springfield in order to make the connections that would help him strike a death blow to slavery.
Yes, a death blow. That obviously worked. That definitely worked, bro. Ironically enough, the first person to die in the raid was a black non-combatant. His name was Hayward Shepard, and he was shot by abolitionist forces because he thought it was a robbery.
Connections that would put him in contact with Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and the Secret Six, the abolitionist financiers who discreetly funded his guerrilla war. The path to bloody Kansas was laid, and John Brown would follow it.
Notice the music in the background. I feel like that's all I need to say. The music is obviously trying to make you think, ooh, yeah, this guy's a real good guy. This guy's a real good guy. Let's just forget why it's called a fucking massacre.
Expression. Here by God, the man said, in the presence of these witnesses, from this time I consecrate my life to the destruction.
When refused entry, they set fire to the house with torches made of prairie hay to keep us all from being burned to death. My father opened the door. They came in and handcuffed my father and two older brothers, William and Drury, and started to take me, but my mother begged them to leave me as I would. Now, do I think that the slaveholders were the good guys in Bleeding Kansas? No, and I really don't want this video to look this way. I think that both of them were bad guys. The point I'm trying to get across is that there were no good guys in Bleeding Kansas. It's kind of weird for pretty much every history YouTuber to act like there were. Like, I already showed you one example of him literally just murdering random people. And it's especially weird for Extra History to be making videos like this, where they spend half the video talking about how John Brown was such a good family man. I get that this is a nothing burger of a video, but you know what? If this gets 3 bagillion likes, then I'll maybe make a video about Bleeding Kansas or something. I don't know. So what did we learn? John Brown is a terrorist, and Extra History is pretty fucking stupid.